All right, I think we are live. Hey there, how is it going? It is your muscle building coach, Lee Hayward. And I just want to make sure that this is coming through loud and clear and that you can hear me and see me. So for those of you who are tuned in live to this video chat right now, please let me know in the chat window if this is coming through loud and clear. I always want to do a little mic and video test to make sure that you can hear and see and it's coming through. So if you would do me the favor and post in the chat window and let me know, I would really appreciate it. And today, the video chat, this is the first video chat of 2019. So, hey, Happy New Year. Welcome to 2019, right? I mean, this is a big year, obviously. I mean, every year is a big year, but what we're in this phase now as far as fitness is concerned, this is the New Year's boom, right? Every year is kind of the same thing where people set their New Year's resolution goals. And I actually sent out an email not too long ago for those of you who are subscribed to my Bodybuilding Tips email newsletter, you know, that I mentioned how I'm not a fan of New Year's resolutions because the way that just the whole idea of it, you know, setting a goal once a year. And it's the way I use the analogy. Imagine if you went to the gym once a year or you ate clean once a year or something. If you do something once a year, you're not going to get anything from it. It has to be an ongoing thing, right? Goal setting, personal development, all this kind of stuff has to be an ongoing thing if you're actually going to make progress. So the whole idea of setting a goal once a year, you know, there's nothing wrong with it. But it needs to be done a heck of a lot more than once a year. And you have to keep recommitting and refocusing and realigning yourself in order to actually achieve it and make that goal a reality. So that's why I'm not a huge fan of a New Year's resolution goal. I like to have this ongoing goal setting. In fact, having a goal setting journal, right, where you can, you know, I like to go old school, pen and paper, and just jot stuff down, write down your goals and journal about it, so that you can keep this front and center. And this is going to be critical for when it comes to actually following through and achieving these goals. So what we're going to do today, we're going to basically outline a strategy, a mindset, a plan of action, if you will, that you can apply to make the New Year's resolution, make this whole New Year's fitness boom the best that it can be for you. So that's what we're going to discuss. Now, I just want to make sure it is coming through loud and clear. We've got a lot of people tuning in. Great to see the comments and the feedback coming through. Thank you, guys. I do appreciate it. Now, if there's any specific questions you have, feel free to post them in the video chat window, and I will discuss them as they come through. But first, we're just kind of going to do a little overview of how I'd recommend someone to approach this whole New Year's fitness thing. And I'm assuming I'm going to kind of gear this towards maybe a beginner or someone who's coming back to the gym after a layoff. Now, I know I'm probably preaching to the choir here, because I'm probably preaching to people who are going to the gym on an ongoing basis. And if that's the case, hey, there's nothing wrong with hearing this again as a refresher, if you will, right? I mean, the key to success isn't so much learning something new, but it's mastering the basics. Being consistent with the basics. That's what's actually going to move you forward. And that's something that I've learned from following some very successful people in you know, bodybuilding and fitness and powerlifting and athletics. Sometimes when you get around the most successful people, you know, people who are on the, you know, the national level or even the professional level, and you think, man, they must be doing some crazy stuff. And you know, in some cases they probably are, but very often when you actually see what they're doing and you talk to them and you learn about it, there's nothing magical. I mean, they're doing the same type of stuff that even, you know, an amateur or weekend warrior would be doing, but they're doing it so much more consistently. They're doing it with more passion. They're doing it, you know, with more effort, more drive, more focus. It's still the same stuff. I mean, we're still doing the same exercises. We're still eating the same food. We're still counting our macros and doing all that crap. You're still doing all the same stuff, but they're doing it at a higher level, and that's why they're more successful. You know, rather than the on and off again or half-ass approach that so many people take, especially the weekend warrior approach, people who are really operating at a high level, they are masters of the basics. They really have the fundamentals dialed in, and that's why they're so successful. So we're going to cover some of those fundamentals, especially for a beginner who's coming back to the gym after a layoff, or maybe you're in that phase where you're ready to step up your game to another level and make the most of it. So first off, the first tip that I have for you is kind of going to be a bit counterintuitive. I want you to take it slow. A lot of people, this is the biggest mistake you're going to see with the whole New Year's boom, is people are going to be so fired up, so motivated for the short term. They're going to say, man, I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to do this. This is the year. I'm getting myself in shape. I'm going to work out every day. I'm going to stick to a diet. Man, we're going to make it happen. And they're all full of piss and vinegar, right? They're excited, right? Ready to go. And they'll go to the gym and they'll work out, 2 hours a day. And they'll probably do that for a week. And then they're going to be so sore, so painful, so burnt out, maybe even pull, some muscles or strain something in the process, especially if you're deconditioned. If you do too much too soon, you're just going to break your body down faster than it can recover, and it's not going to help you. It's actually going to slow your progress, and it's going to lead to frustration and burnout and a potential injury rather than actually moving you forward and closer to your goals. So take it slow. Step one. I mean, yeah, it's okay to have that motivation, that drive, but be smart about your approach. So if you're going to the gym, if you haven't been to the gym for a month or more, start back just like a beginner. Take it easy, kind of go through the motions. And I've used this myself when I've gone through different phases of my training. Like maybe I've had to take a layoff. Sometimes it's a layoff due to an injury. Sometimes it's a layoff just due to, you go through a motivational slump. Over the years, I've been through my ups and downs with motivation and all that kind of stuff. I've shared my most recent slump that I had as I was getting into my late 30s and approaching 40, right? I went through that slump and I let myself go physically and recommitted myself. But I've went through multiple slumps over the years. Especially when I was younger and going to college. There was times like when exams came about, like I would stop working out and just focus on my studies. There was other times, when I was building my business back in the early days, if I got really busy and I was focusing on, doing some specific project or whatever, I would literally take time off the gym so I could dedicate my time to whatever particular project was at hand. So I've been through ups and downs. I've been through layoffs and all that kind of stuff. And when you're coming back to the gym after a layoff, you need to approach it just like a beginner. And I don't care how much experience you got. Even if you've been working out for 20 years, if you've taken a month or more off the gym, you need to come back and approach it just like a beginner who's starting off brand new. So what I'd recommend is a total body workout 3 days per week. Just keep it simple, one major exercise per muscle group, just kind of go through the motions, and don't push yourself too hard. Like literally go through the motions, like lightweight. Even if you're doing all your workout with warm-up weight, you don't need to strain. There's none of this repping out to failure, all that kind of stuff. Just go through the motions and get into the habit of going to the gym. Build up that consistency. And just by doing that, you will indirectly increase your work capacity and build yourself up gradually. So what I usually recommend if I'm starting someone off brand new is I like to do an exercise for each of the major movement patterns. So we'll do, say, like an overhead press, overhead pull. So like a shoulder press, a lat pull down, that will cover overhead pressing and overhead pulling. Then we do some horizontal pressing, maybe like a chest press machine or a bench press, along with some sort of row, a horizontal row, maybe like a seated row machine or some sort of chest supported row, whatever you have available at the gym. That will cover the major plane of motion for the upper body. Then we get into some legs, maybe do something like a leg press or maybe even a body weight squat, leg extension, leg curl. And then you can get into doing some arm extensions and arm curls, basic bicep curl, basic tricep extension, and then probably finish it off with some abdominal work, maybe like a crunch or a hyper extension, something along those lines. But keep it simple, just one major movement for one major exercise for each of the major movement patterns of the body. So a shoulder press, a lat pull down, a chest press, a row, a leg press or squat, leg extension, leg curl, bicep curl, tricep extension, and then some work for the core. Boom. And again, just do 2 to 3 sets, taking it easy, going through the motions. Nothing too complex. And if you want a full program that actually outlines this entire system. I have one on my YouTube channel. You go to the main YouTube channel, and there in the playlist, there's a beginner's playlist. There's one, it's a total body workout for beginners. And I put this video together a few years back, but it's still just applicable today as it was then. I'm probably actually going to make an updated one, but covering that same template of how you can use this to get started. And I usually recommend for people to do 2 to 3 sets of each exercise. Let's say 3, round it off, 3 sets of each exercise. First one is ridiculously light, just very lightweight to go through the motions, get comfortable with the movement pattern. Second one, a little bit heavier. Third one, a little bit heavier again, but still stopping short of failure on all sets. I mean, when you're coming back to the gym after a layoff or you're starting off brand new, don't go repping out to failure. I mean, failure it's not needed at this stage. I mean, it's actually just going to cause more stress and damage and actually slow the progress at the beginning. So just stop your sets, rack the weight on your own. None of this struggling, getting stapled to the bench under a barbell bench press or any of that stuff. You know, stop way before there and just go through the motions. So that will cover the workout. Do that every other day or 3 days a week. And then on your off days from the gym, do some form of low intensity cardio. Doesn't have to be anything crazy. I mean, it could be getting outside and going for a walk. If the weather is not fit to go outside for a walk, it could be going to the gym and using the cardio machines there. I mean, you could walk on the treadmill. You could use the stationary bike, the elliptical, the stepper, the rower, the whatever they have. Whatever you fancy at the gym, use that. You can also probably check out some local community centers. If you live in an area like I'm in Canada right now, and of course it's snow outside, and a lot of people don't like walking in the snow. I personally love it. I find it's extra challenging to walk in the snow because you're walking through snow and you got your snow boots on, and that just makes walking that much more challenging. It's more high intensity walking, if you will, when you're walking through the snow. But if you don't like that, I can appreciate that. You can probably go to like some community centers probably have walking tracks. Like we have up at our local stadium, there is a walking track around the stadium, and it's free to use. You can go in there, 7 days a week and use the walking track. And sometimes we'll actually do that if the weather's not fit, especially if we want to go for a walk with baby Harvey. Sometimes we'll take him up to the stadium and we'll go walk laps around there. There's some other places I know out in town. There's a place where there's an indoor walking track, and maybe have something like that available in your local area where you can do that. Get some cardio that way. And the bottom line, when it comes to cardio, it really doesn't matter what you do as long as you do it and do it consistently. So again, it could be walking outside, it could be walking inside, it could be cardio machines, it could be whatever. If you live somewhere where it's nice and warm and sunny, you can go for a bicycle ride, you can go hiking in the woods, go for a walk on the beach, anything like that. Bottom line, just do some form of cardiovascular exercise. I would recommend start with at least 30 minutes a session and then build it up from there. And with the cardio, have fun with it. Like, you don't have, when I go for a walk outside, I don't like look at my time and say, oh my, I got to stick to a 30 minutes or whatever. I just have fun with it. I mean, sometimes I'll walk for 30 minutes. Sometimes I might be walking for 2 hours. If I'm going for a nice hike in the woods or something like that. I really don't have a time frame. But obviously, if you're starting off new and you're kind of deconditioned, then I wouldn't recommend going for a 2-hour hike right off the get-go. I mean, start off small and build yourself up. But you don't have to be too strict with it. I mean, you can have fun, right? Just enjoy yourself. Get out there in nature. Get some fresh air and also some fat-burning cardio at the same time. And that's it. Keep it simple. Total body workout one day, low-intensity cardio the next. Total body workout one day, low-intensity cardio the next. And do that for at least 6 weeks. After 6 weeks, then you can reevaluate. I mean, if you're enjoying that total body workout and the cardio and you're making progress, you're getting leaner, you're getting in shape, and you enjoy that, then you don't have to stop, right? But stick it out for a minimum of 6 weeks before you do this reevaluation. After that, then you can decide, well, am I ready to step it up to a more advanced program, or am I happy just doing this, general fitness maintenance program, if you will? And that really depends on you. I mean, because I know we have people from all walks of life tuning into this. I mean, we have some who are, teenagers just getting started. We got people in their 20s and 30s who are probably more ambitious and want to build themselves up and, get ripped and jacked and bodybuilder shape. We probably have some guys 40s, 50s, 60s, and beyond who are just looking to maintain their health and fitness and live a healthy, active lifestyle. So depending on where you are, I mean, if you want some more hardcore strength training, then after that 6-week phase, you can bump it up to a more hardcore program, whether that be a strength training program, help, a powerlifting program, or a bodybuilding split or something like that. That's fine. But again, we can kind of, adjust that based on your individual training goals and all that. But that's 6 weeks down the road. So for now, stick to the basics, just a general total body workout 3 days a week. As far as your nutrition is concerned, this is kind of the wild card, because I know a lot of people are thinking, well, what's the best diet? Should I go keto? Should I use intermittent fasting? Should I, what's the best macronutrient split and all that kind of stuff? Do I need to do carb cycling and blah, blah, blah? To start off, what I would recommend for most people is don't even get hung up on all the different nutrition fads or whatever. I just want you to kind of do an evaluation of your current diet right now and make better food choices. Simple as that. I mean, make some better food choices. And within the foods that you like and the foods you enjoy, see if you can make better choices. So, I mean, I'll give you an example. Let's say you got someone who's starts their day with the typical breakfast, and they have, cereal, like a box cereal with milk and, I don't know, maybe a couple slices of toast and a glass of orange juice or whatever, a typical breakfast. That's kind of the breakfast that I was raised on when I was a kid growing up. I always had the cereal, and Dad used to try and convince himself that it was healthy because he'd buy the high fiber cereal, right? As if we needed. If you're eating enough fruits and vegetables and natural unprocessed foods, you don't need to be forcing extra fiber down you. I mean, fiber is kind of like a double-edged sword, because you can actually get too much fiber, right? I mean, I know some people go overboard with this stuff, but bottom line, that's a topic for another chat. But we started off cereal and toast and juice. That was a typical breakfast. So what would I recommend if that's what your typical breakfast is? How about you swap out that cereal and milk for something a bit more unprocessed, a bit more healthy, maybe a bowl of oatmeal. If you want to bump up the protein content, you can mix up like a high protein oatmeal. I actually have some YouTube videos showing how to do that. Or you could have more of a high protein breakfast, something like maybe an omelet with some chopped veggies. You could have eggs, whole eggs, egg whites. I like to use a combination of both. And something along those lines. So just make a better shift to more natural, unprocessed carbohydrates and bump up the protein. A general rule of thumb to improve your nutrition: more protein, more veggies. More protein, more veggies. If you look into doing that, you're going to improve your nutrition across the board. When it comes to your lunch, your dinner, all these meals, always try and start with the protein and veggies first. I mean, when I sit down to a dinner meal, I always start with a large garden salad. I'm lazy, so I don't like to make my own salad. What I do is I go and buy the pre-made ready salads at the grocery store. You can get these big bags of them. Costco sells big bags of pre-made salads, usually the best deal around. But even if you get them at the grocery store or wherever, start off with one of these big salads. And that's going to get you a lot of the vegetables and the nutrients and the roughage that you need in your system. And it's also going to help to curb your appetite. And when I say a salad, don't have these little tiny salad bowl salads. Like sometimes you go to a restaurant and they'll give you like a side salad. I mean, 3 or 4 forkfuls and it's gone. For me, I break out a big old mixing bowl. I like the same bowl you're going to stir up cake batter in or something like that. I get the big ass mixing bowl and I fill that sucker up with salad. And that's my secret weapon for controlling my appetite, because I've got a ferocious appetite. I like to eat, right? I love to eat. So I'll have this big bowl of garden salad and I'll eat that first before I eat anything else. So I'm filling my belly with all these veggies, all this roughage, and I'm getting the eating satisfaction of chewing it up and, enjoying it. And that gives me the eating satisfaction that I need and that I crave. And then I go on to, I'll have my protein foods, whatever that may be, the meat, the chicken, the fish, the whatever. And I usually also have another side of vegetables like that. Maybe I have some steamed or stir-fried veggies to go along with it. And then I'll have some complex carbs, be that potatoes, a sweet potato, or rice. Sometimes I'll have pasta. but something along those lines. And that's the way I always like to structure my meals, is I think of my meals in thirds. I want a third protein, third veggies, and a third complex carbs. And in my case, if you actually weigh out the ratios, I'm actually probably even getting more than a third of the veggies, because I'll have the big salad along with some veggies on my plate afterwards, right? But when I lay out a plate, you know, there's protein, maybe like, again, chicken, meat, fish, something like that, veggies, steamed or stir fried or whatever, and then the complex carbs being the rice, the potato, the pasta, that stuff. And that's the way I like to have my meals. And if you follow those simple guidelines, that will move you in the right direction. I mean, even if you're not counting calories, counting macros or whatever, because when you're eating food like that, your appetite will limit your caloric intake. Because like if you stuff yourself with processed food, like let's say you're stuffing yourself with, you know, fried chicken, and you're stuffing yourself with French fries and or pizza or greasy fried foods and stuff like that, by the time you get the volume in your stomach that you need to be satisfied, you've eaten a shit ton of calories, because all those foods are very calorie dense, you know, high in fat, high in sugar, that kind of stuff. Whereas if you're eating the natural unprocessed foods, the caloric density is so low that you can eat until you get your eating satisfaction, eat until your belly is comfortably full, but the volume of calories that you're consuming is so much less. So very often when I eat a meal, I'm not counting macros or anything like that. I'm literally eating until I'm satisfied. I sometimes that's a lot, sometimes it's not so much, but I really don't, you know, weigh it and measure it or anything like that. I eat until I'm comfortably full. But because of the food choices I'm making, I'm able to enjoy those foods, and they're high nutrient foods. They're foods that are going to help to fuel muscle growth and aid with fat burning, rather than empty calories that are going to get stored as body fat and are just going to load your body up with toxins and crap that you don't need. So food choice, priority number one. Before you even go thinking about counting calories or restriction, improve the quality of the food. If you do that, you can probably even get away without counting calories. I kid you not. Like a lot of my coaching students that I work with, depending on what level they're at, sometimes they're not counting calories. They're not like breaking out MyFitnessPal and saying, oh, I'm eating, you know, 50 grams of this and 25 grams of that, or what. They're just eating. They're just eating good, natural, wholesome food and exercising regularly, and it's working for them. And if it's working, hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? It's only usually when you really need to take your physique from lean to ripped that you need to get very nitpicky with the numbers. You know, that's when you want to be counting and tracking your macros. Like say like a competitive bodybuilder who's peaking for a competition, or a fitness model who's peaking for a photo shoot or something along those lines. Then yeah, that's when you need to get nitpicky and really, you know, strict with the numbers and making sure to control the portion sizes of those clean, healthy foods, right? So that you're staying within a caloric deficit. But if for the average person who's just trying to lean out, get in better shape, improve their health, you don't need to deprive yourself. You can actually enjoy a healthy diet full of these, you know, abundance, natural, unprocessed foods, and you know, you can still move yourself in the right direction. So that's the kind of stuff that I recommend for most people, and it's simple, but it works. Now I know some people are going to say, well, what about cheat meals and what about all that stuff? If you are going to have a cheat, here's a few tips that I'm going to suggest for you if you do want to indulge. First off, try and do your cheat meal later in the day. So ideally, like in the evening, maybe like for your dinner or something like that, but you're later in the day. And this probably goes counterintuitive to what a lot of people think, because some people say, well, shouldn't I cheat earlier in the day so I'll have more chance to burn that off? Yes and no. I mean, that's one side of the coin. But the problem with cheating early in the day is it sets you up to cheat more. All right. I'd rather have a cheat meal, not a cheat day. Because where things go off track is when you have a cheat meal that turns into a cheat day, and then you have a cheat day, which turns into a cheat week, and then a cheat week, which turns into a cheat month. And then by that stage, you're off the bandwagon and you're just eating whatever the hell you want. So try and limit yourself to a cheat meal, not a cheat day. So if you wait till later in the evening, then very often, this is the way the body works, is a lot of times our appetite and our cravings kind of kick in later at night. It's kind of like ingrained in us. It's kind of natural. So what I try to do is I will eat clean throughout the early part of the day. So I stick to the plan of eating the clean, natural, unprocessed foods all day long, which helps to control my appetite and fuel my body. And then later in the day, if I am going to go out to dinner or have, we're going to pizza and movie night or something like that, have that later in the evening. And then you only have that one cheat meal. And then the very next day, you can get back on track again with your clean eating. So I find that it serves two purposes. One, it limits the amount of junk you eat, because if you start cheating early in the day, it's easy to say, well, I blew today, so it's just a little, I started cheating early in the day. Well, hey, diet starts tomorrow, right? And then they end up eating a hell of a lot more junk food over the course of the day. Whereas if you waited until your final meal of the day, you've eaten clean all day long, and it limits the amount of junk that you're going to consume. And you'll probably actually enjoy it more because you're eating it at a time when your cravings and everything else tend to be at their peak. And another side of this as well, very often after you eat, a cheat meal, you kind of feel a bit heavy and sluggish, and you're probably not going to want to do too much afterwards, right? If I eat pizza, for example, like we have a pizza and movie night, I eat that, I'm not feeling too energetic afterwards. I'm kind of like just want to lounge around on the couch and wait till it's time to go to bed. I'm not too eager and energetic, to get up and move and go to the gym or be active. So if I was eating pizza early in the day, like even if I had it around lunchtime, then the rest of my afternoon is shot because I'm just feeling so heavy, sluggish, and bloated from that food. I'm not going to have much energy. So having it later in the day allows me to enjoy it, and then who cares if you're lazy and later in the day, because you're just going to be getting ready to go to bed shortly thereafter anyway. So it's not going to ruin your day, if you will. So that's why I like to have my cheats late in the day rather than early in the day, because it just works better for the system, and again, minimizes the amount of junk you're going to be consuming. So that's kind of a brief overview. Like say, I hope this is helpful. And what I'll be doing is I'm going to be putting together some new YouTube videos covering like a New Year's strategy outlining this. I'd like to put together a new updated total body workout, and even maybe some day in the life videos just outlining, showing some of the stuff that I do eat, like how I plan out my meals and that, because it's nice to see it, but again, it's not anything magical or structured. Like I know some people, you see guys weighing out their chicken breasts and all this stuff, and measuring out their rice and all that. I mean, if you're getting ready for a bodybuilding show, yeah, that makes sense. But if you're just trying to live a healthy lifestyle, that kind of stuff is a pain in the ass. I'm going to be honest. It is a pain in the ass. If just imagine you had to go through every meal every day for the rest of your life, weighing and counting and measuring every morsel of food you put in your mouth. I mean, how frustrating would that be when you just don't have the freedom to eat what you want when you want? And when I say what you want, I mean eating good quality food. I'm not talking about junk, but like it's so much. It's liberating. It's free when you can just sit down to a meal and know that, hey, when I make up that big bowl of salad, I can eat as much of that as I want. When I have my protein, veggies, and carbs, I can eat until I'm comfortably full. I don't need to be measuring and weighing and portioning and saying, oh, I gotta, I can only have, 3/4 of a cup of this, and I can't go for a full cup or what. Man, it's just a pain in the ass. I hate doing that. I'd rather eat till I'm comfortably full. And I mean, as long as you're consistent with the exercise, consistent with the weight training, consistent with the cardio, consistent with the clean, healthy nutrition, you can make that work, right? I mean, I've even gotten contests ripped for bodybuilding shows without counting calories. I've done it. I've done it both ways. I've went through writing everything I ate down, weighed everything, counted and tracked and all that stuff. And I mean, it works. Don't get me wrong. It still works. But I've also went through it where I've just stuck to the habits, rather than getting caught up in the numbers, just stick to the habits and consistency with those habits day in, day out. And quite honestly, I've gotten in my peak shape. The best shape I ever was in was 2010 and 2011. Those years were my two best years that I really figured out how to fine tune my body and get in peak shape, especially 2010. That year for me, I really nailed it in terms of my conditioning. And I didn't count a macro, didn't count a calorie. I just focused on the habits of the cardio, habits of the training, habits of the food. And I followed those habits consistently. and it worked really well for me. So again, just want to let you know there's more than one way to go about it, right? I know if counting calories and tracking macros works for you, I'm not saying don't do it. Hey, go for it. I've did it for years, but I find that once you have the fundamentals in place, you don't always have to be a slave to counting calories and counting your macros. You can just do the habits and still get pretty darn good results, if not probably even some of your best results. So there, with that being said, I'm going to jump into our video chat and see what kind of questions and comments are coming through. If there's anything specific about what I discussed, feel free to post them there, and I'll do my best to answer them. All right, we have Woodulos, one of the regulars to the video chat. Every week, this guy tunes in and he says, I can't make it as I'm heading off to the gym. He says, have a good one. So he posted that as the very first comment to the video chat. So if you do watch this replay, thank you for your support. We've got Raymond joining us. We've got Jose joining us. Fayaz, I believe. Silver. Chavez. Jose. Blah, blah. Happy New Year. Happy New Year. Okay. Let's see what else we got. Oops. Alfredo is joining us. Manuel. Okay. Happy New Year, Lee. I started taking cold showers, but the way I do it, I start with warm water and didn't decrease it until it's freezing cold. Is this approach correct? Thanks. All right. A little bit different topic than what I was getting at, but this is something that I am an advocate of. Well, I've mentioned this on previous video chats and even have a video talking about the Wim Hof method. Right now that winter's here, it's a great time to practice the Wim Hof method if you are man enough to venture out into the cold. How I started building myself up to the cold exposure, and the easy way to do it is cold showers, right? I mean, you can do that any time of year. The more extreme approach is, of course, going outside in the cold in the wintertime, be it in the snow or whatever. But how I started, I did the exact same thing as you did, starting off with the warm shower, and then I gradually turned the hot water down, turn the cold water up, so it, just ease my way into it. And I did that until the point where it would just get slightly uncomfortable. And I kept doing that until I was to the point where it was just nothing but cold water coming out of the faucet. So that's how I started to build myself up, build up my tolerance. The way I do it now, I just man up. I turn on cold water, nothing but the freezing cold water coming in. And of course, Canadian winter, the cold water coming out of the faucet is pretty darn cold. I mean, it's literally, in the single digit degrees, because it's just above freezing coming through. And I just pure cold water, and I'll take a few deep breaths, and I just plunge in. I just get in there and just let that cold. I mean, you get the shock to the system, but within 30 seconds or so, I start to feel comfortable. After about 2 minutes, I'm totally comfortable. I mean, after 2 minutes, it doesn't even feel cold anymore, right? But that initial shock to the system, which is what you want the cold exposure for, to build up your immune system, to build up all the, to strengthen your body. I mean, there's so many benefits to cold exposure. Again, research Wim Hof method, or even just do Google search cold showers, and you'll get, oodles of reading, enough to satisfy you all weekend if you decide to read about it. But that's the way I do it now. I don't even build up to it anymore. It's none of this hot water and then gradually turn it down cold. I just full on cold and jump in, and just let the body adapt to it. And again, within 30 seconds, the shock is gone. And after 2 minutes, it actually starts to feel warm. And after 2 minutes, I can go on then I went as long as like 10 minutes of just pure cold water, and no problem at all. But it's that first phase, right? The first phase is the hardest. Once you get beyond that, it gets easier. All right, another question coming through here. Pull-ups every day for a bigger back. You can incorporate regular pull-ups if you want to specialize in this. And this is something that I've done myself. How I recommend it is literally just do like 1 set a day. Start off with that, and then you can build up the volume gradually, but like start off 1 set of pull-ups, maybe whatever you can do, like 5-10 reps, whatever it is that you can do with good form. Do that every single day, just 1 set a day, boom, boom, boom. After a couple weeks of that, if you feel that you can handle more and and everything's progressing fine, then maybe you could do like one set in the morning and one set in the evening, or like a couple sets at a time, something like that. But daily pull-ups is one of the best ways to get better at doing pull-ups. And you could apply that strategy to any exercise. Like if you want to get better at push-ups, you could do daily push-ups. But the key is to limit the volume. Again, one set, two sets, something like that, and just do the frequency. Because little bouts of exercise like that, your body can handle it and can recover from it. So, I mean, it's not like going to the gym and doing a full-on 20-set back workout or something like that. You know, if you just do little bouts of exercise consistently, you can recover from it. You can build up your tolerance to it and actually get stronger by doing it. And that's a strategy I've used for building up stubborn body parts. You know, you can just little mini frequent workouts on a daily basis. And do that in addition to going to the gym. So you'd still have your regular back workout at the gym like you normally do. This is just something you would throw in extra if you want to specialize. Now, again, it's an advanced strategy. I mean, I wouldn't recommend a beginner or someone just getting started to do this. But if you're more advanced, you're already working out consistently, and you're looking for a way to step your game up to a higher level, this is one of the strategies you can use. All right, we have Glenn joining us. Says if you have 2 tricep extension compound routine, one for grip and one for using cables, would that be considered overtraining? There's 4 sets of each with 10 reps. 2 tricep extensions, compound routine. I think Mari meant like one for close grip and one use. Honestly, I can't answer what would be considered overtraining or not overtraining, because it really depends on the individual, your work capacity, etc. I mean, it's such a broad question, because if you're more advanced, you've been working out consistently, and you have a high work capacity, high fitness level, you could probably handle higher volume of workouts. For someone who's brand new, then they don't have a high fitness level, they don't have high work capacity, and they can't handle as much. So, for example, when I suggested the beginner's workout program for someone who's new or coming back to the gym after a layoff, 1 exercise per muscle group. That's it. You know, 3 sets. Keep it simple. Now, obviously, for an advanced bodybuilder who's been training for years and is trying to really maximize their muscle development, they can handle a lot more than 1 exercise per body part. And they can handle more than 3 sets if they choose to, right? I mean, you can do multiple sets, right? I mean, Arnold was famous for doing 20 sets per body part. That was kind of like his thing. Now, I mean, 20 sets is kind of pushing the limits for volume, but hey, it works for some people. So again, I can't say like this 4 sets is overtraining and 3 sets isn't, or whatever. It really depends on the individual. What I would suggest is, if this is the program you have planned for yourself, try it and see how your body responds to it. I mean, your body will tell you if it's overtraining or not based on your results. I mean, if it's too much, your body will give you the warning signs that it's too much. You know, you'll be feeling the aches, the pains, the soreness. You won't be making the strength gains, you know, and that'll give you your cue that, hey, maybe I need to either have more recovery time in between workouts or back off the volume of training. But if you're following it and you feel good, you're seeing progress, you're making strength gains, then, you know, keep doing it. So again, it's really an individual thing, and that applies to any workout routine. You know, I get this question a lot. Like, people will post up, you know, they're split, and they'll say, okay, day 1 I do this, day 2 I do that, and blah blah blah, and then they'll say, is that overtraining? I can't answer that, right? It's all relative. So you really need to, you know, I guess, adjust your workouts according to your own body type. All right, another question here from B Victorious, and he says, greetings, Lee. I want to ask you about your calves. I know they're big, you're genetically blessed, but if you stop training them even a bit, do you lose size? If yes, how much? Interesting. I have gone, with my calf training, I have gone periods without doing any calf work, any direct calf work, that is. And I've gone through periods where I regularly do calf work. And I do notice a difference. If I'm regularly doing calf training, I will see more fullness, more hardness. You know, I will see the results from it, obviously. But if I take a break from it, I will lose a little bit of size. But again, I've got genetically good calves. I have to thank my mother for that, right? She hates big calves. I know a lot of women hate big calves. but mom's got big calves, and that's where I got mine from. But the thing is, even if I'm not doing direct calf training in the gym, I'm still getting calf training as a side benefit from doing cardio. And I do cardio year round. So when you're walking, if you're doing, the stepper, or you're cycling, or anything like that, that's providing a lot of indirect calf training. So even if I'm not doing standing calf raises and seated calf raises and all that stuff at the gym, I'm still getting a lot of indirect calf work just from my cardio workouts. So I truly haven't really gone any prolonged amount of time without doing any calf training entirely, because in order to do that, I'd have to stop doing cardio as well, and I don't. So my calves usually stay pretty consistent year round because of that. All right, Alex is asking how to get bigger arms. This, again, it's a huge question because there's so many ways that you can go about doing this. But I'm going to give you one strategy that I think would give you a couple strategies that I think could help. One is how you train your arms when you actually do your arm workouts. And this is a training strategy that I like for advanced lifters. And it's called positions of flexion. I have a video series on YouTube. You go open up my playlist series, you can see it there. But the way positions of flexion works is you are training the muscles through all the major ranges of motion: a mid-range, a fully stretched, and a peak contraction. So mid-range would be, in the case of arms, let's say biceps, a mid-range would be like a barbell curl. Standing barbell curl would be a mid-range bicep exercise, because most of the tension is in the mid-range. It's a big exercise that allows for fairly heavy weight to be lifted. So that would be your mid-range. A fully stretched will be something like a preacher curl. When you do a preacher curl, you really feel your biceps stretch. When you got your arm on the pad and you stretch it out, you really feel that stretch in the biceps. And as you curl the weight up, once you get to a certain point in the preacher curl, the tension actually comes off the biceps. Like when you're doing preacher curls and you got your arms fully curled up, there's very little tension in the biceps. You can actually almost get like a little mini break at the top because of that. So that's how you know an exercise is a stretch. You'll feel it in that fully stretched position, but not so much in the other ranges. And then you want to finish off with a peak contraction. Now, in the case of biceps, a peak contraction would be like a concentration curl. And with this movement, you have to fight to hold that peak contraction position. When you're doing a concentration curl, you really have to fight to hold it at the top position. And that's where the majority of the tension is. So with your biceps, you want to focus on positions of flexion is what I would recommend. Same would apply for triceps. In the case of triceps, mid-range would be close grip bench press. Fully stretched would be probably some sort of overhead extension or some sort of like a skull crusher or something like that, where you stretch out the long head of the triceps. And then the peak contraction would be something maybe like a dumbbell kickback, or maybe even a rope pushdown, where you really get that peak contraction at the top of the movement. So that's how I would recommend structuring the workouts themselves. And another thing that would help is increasing the frequency. For stubborn body parts, you can increase the frequency. And sometimes, depending on your situation, you may want to even decrease the frequency of some of your stronger body parts so that you can increase the frequency of your stubborn body parts. This is the fundamental principle that's covered in my ebook, Blast Your Biceps. If you want, you can go head on over to blastyourbiceps.com and get a copy for yourself. But that is the fundamental principle there. It's a 3-phase program. And in the second phase, which is the actual arm specialization phase of the program, that's one of the things we do, is we purposely increase the frequency of the arm training while decreasing the frequency of your other body parts so that you allow for adequate recovery time. Because you can only do so much. You can only do so much and still recover. So, I mean, you can't like train everything 100% and then add on extra specialization workouts on top of that and expect to recover. So you need to balance it out. And that's why we actually back off the frequency and the volume for your stronger muscle groups to allow more recovery time for your stubborn muscle groups. So again, if you want to go check that out, just head on over to blastyourbiceps.com and you can pick up a copy of that program there. All right, let's see what else we got. We got Be Victorious is saying, what's your favorite meal for breakfast? Personally, I don't eat breakfast. I prefer to do a modified intermittent fasting type of diet, and that includes skipping breakfast. There's a couple of reasons for that. Now, first off, if I was in a mass building phase, like I was trying to bulk up and gain muscular body weight, I would definitely have breakfast, because that's another feeding opportunity. Helps you get more calories and more nutrients in your system, and basically bump up your overall caloric intake. So if you're trying to bulk up and gain weight, definitely have breakfast, right? It helps. If you're trying to either maintain or lose fat, then skipping breakfast can be advantageous. So that's what I do. I purposely skip breakfast, and I find that that works really well for me as a way to control my caloric intake. And I'm not naturally very hungry in the morning. You know, when I get up in the morning, I like to have I'll drink some water. You know, I'll have some coffee or something like that, and I'm good. I'm good for several hours. I mean, in fact, I can go all day, you know, pretty much, you know, my entire working day without having any food in my system. And I find that it works really well for me. And so I personally don't eat breakfast. I follow an intermittent fasting approach that way. And I'm flexible with it. Like some days, depending on what's on the go, I mean, I may go all day long without eating food, and then I'll eat my meals later in the day. Other times I might start eating around lunchtime. It really depends on my schedule, what I've got on the go and things like that. But I very rarely will eat breakfast unless it's some sort of social thing. You know, like maybe, you know, we got Saturday or Sunday morning, maybe like Patricia wants to make pancakes for the family or something like that. Or, you know, maybe we're going to go out for breakfast at a restaurant, you know, with the family or something along those lines. Then, yeah, I'm going to have breakfast then. But on a normal, you know, day, me doing my own thing, I rarely eat breakfast. Okay, what else? Okay, Charles is joining us. He says, greetings from Charleston, South Carolina. He says he's 53 years old. He deadlifts every 2 weeks. Should I increase it to once or twice a week to build strength? That really depends. Now, obviously, one of the best ways to get better at a lift is to do it more frequently. But the deadlift, especially if you're training it hard, needs a lot of recovery time. Of the 3 power lifts, you know, the squat, the bench, and the deadlift takes the longest to recover from for most people. So I know a lot of power lifters deadlift once a week, make great progress with it. I know some guys even stretched out even longer, you know, deadlift every couple weeks. And the thing you need to realize with the deadlift is if you're doing a lot of training for the squat as well, there's a lot of overlap. The deadlift and the squat work the same muscle groups. It's just the deadlift tends to place more emphasis on the back. The squat tends to place more emphasis on the legs. But in both cases, the back, the spinal erectors, the hips, the glutes, the hamstrings, you know, those are the major movers for both the deadlift as well as the squat. So if you're doing squats and you're doing deadlifts, you need to find that sweet spot, that compromise between the two. So one thing that I would sometimes do back when I was training for powerlifting is I would have one heavy max out type of workout with either or. So for example, I would probably do like a max out workout for squat 1 week, and then maybe do a max out workout for deadlift the next week. And then if I was going to do any other training for those exercises, it would be a lighter supplementary type of workout where I'm not pushing myself, you know, with max effort weights. So again, there's different ways to go about it, but bottom line is you need to adjust it according to you and your goals and your body type, but pay attention to how your body responds. If you're starting to feel beat up, sore, you know, that the recovery is delaying, like let's just say you try and bump it up training your deadlift every week. If it works, hey, great. Ride that wave of momentum for as long as it works. But if you get to the point where, man, your back is just not recovering the same, you're feeling that, you know, the stiffness and the soreness, and you're not making the strength gains that you like, then scale it back. Scale it back to what you're currently doing, right? So it really takes a bit of trial and error. And another thing you need to consider, you're 53 years old, right? You don't have the recovery of a 23-year-old. So put that into consideration as well. I mean, I'm not saying you're over the hill. I mean, you got guys in their 50s and 60s who are ripped and jacked and look phenomenal, but just, you know, be realistic, right? You don't have the same recovery, and your body is not as forgiving as someone, say, in their 20s. So just put that in perspective as well. All right, let's see what else we got. Okay, this is an interesting one. Jose is saying, is it normal to have pain in the head when working out and afterwards? My head hurts. So exertion headache, that's what you typically refer to that as. And I actually have a video on YouTube talking about exertion headaches. Just go and do a search for Lee Hayward exertion headache. You should find it. It's common. It's not necessarily what I would say normal, but it can be quite common. And there's probably different causes for it. One, some simple solutions that I can kind of share with you right now. Make sure that you stay adequately hydrated. So you're drinking lots of water, not just during your workout, but throughout the day as well, because dehydration is a major cause of headaches. So make sure to stay adequately hydrated. Make sure that you have adequate electrolytes in your system, adequate sodium. A lot of people, especially health-conscious people, purposely avoid salt and high sodium foods. And that is actually a mistake if you are active with weight training and fitness, because when you sweat, your body loses sodium and electrolytes. And if you don't replace that sodium and electrolytes, you're going to suffer the consequences. Your body actually needs sodium. I mean, this is kind of like a side lesson or a side tip for you right here. If you purposely eat a low salt diet and you're avoiding salt at all costs, try salting your food for the next week. Just do it. Just add a little bit of table salt or sea salt or pink Himalayan salt or whatever salt you fancy. I know everybody got their own salt preferences, but just salt your food for the next week. Don't need to go crazy, but just a little bit of salt for flavor. And I guarantee you that the following week, you're going to notice a difference. You're probably going to notice more muscle fullness. You're probably going to get an extra couple of reps per set. I'm telling you, if you go from a low salt diet to a healthy salt diet, meaning you're getting enough salt in order to replace what you're losing through your workouts and everything else, it's almost like taking creatine or something like that. You will experience that same level of strength and muscle fullness just from salt. Right? I mean, I've seen this a lot with my coaching students and with myself. When I first learned this, I mean, it was several years back, because I was always of the mindset that salt is bad. You know, you're going to have a heart attack if you eat salt and all that crap. And it's not the case. I mean, do some research on salt. I mean, there's a lot of research out there now. I mean, you know, we've kind of come with the times, but I know a lot of people are still in the old school thinking that salt is bad, when it's actually, you know, you're at a greater risk of health problems from too little salt than you are from too much, right? So bottom line, that's one thing. Increase your salt intake, increase your water intake. And another thing that's going to help if you're experiencing exertion headaches, I know I've gotten off track here, I'm getting back to exertion headaches, take longer rest periods between sets. So if you're normally resting like a minute between sets, bump it up. Try and rest 2 minutes between sets. And purposely breathe deep during those rest breaks. You know, take deep breaths. Try and get as much oxygen in your system, right? And exaggerate your breath like that. You know, try and get as much deep breathing as you can in between your work sets. And again, that will help to oxygenate your body, get more oxygen to your brain and everything else. And that will help as well. I mean, there's so much more. I mean, there's things we can do as far as neck exercises to improve blood flow and circulation to your head and all that. But those are a few things that you can do right away that'll probably help. More water, more salt, more breathing. Boom, that should help with the exertion headache. And if it continues to persist, you know, if you try and do all this stuff and you're still getting those headaches, you know, go get it checked out by your doctor to make sure that that's not a root cause of something else that could be, you know, an underlying health issue. In fact, if you've been experiencing exertion headaches or headaches on an ongoing basis, it'd probably be a good idea to see your doctor anyway. Right? You know, rather than trying to seek out an internet diagnosis, it's sometimes better to go see a medical professional, especially, you know, for something like this. You know, if in doubt, get it checked out. That's my advice. All right, let's move on. Okay, this Silver Synthesis is saying, Lee, how did you identify your goals? What targets were you aiming for? What was your purpose for training, and what was your motivation? Okay. Interesting. This is really fits in with the whole New Year's thing and all that, the goal setting and stuff. Goals are going to change with your personal situation. And I'll kind of give you a little quick recap of my own personal situation here now, and we'll probably finish off the video chat with that because I think that'll rack us up to over the hour point. When I started training as a kid, my early motivation was to build up my self-confidence, to build up my self-esteem, and to build up myself physically so that the bullies wouldn't pick on me. You've probably heard me tell my story before, but when I was going through grade school, I got beat up and pushed around and bullied. And my main motivating factor was I just wanted to build myself up so that I wouldn't get the shit kicked out of me, right? I didn't want to be humiliated and fear going to school, right? So that's what drew me to martial arts, and that's what drew me to weight training, to build myself up physically. As I got older and into weight training and took a liking to it and actually seen, hey, this is something I enjoy, and I was making progress, I got into the competitive side of bodybuilding. And that was my motivation now, to take it to the competitive stage and actually improve myself. And so I really got into that. I mean, my goal from, I did my first show. And so the way it works with bodybuilding, competitive bodybuilding, is usually your first goal is just to compete. The goal one is just to get your ass on stage. If you do that, you're a success, right? Regardless of the shape you show up in, just the fact that you went through the process, you stepped on stage, you did it. Boom. That's a huge accomplishment. I mean, that's the goal of any first-time competitor. Once you've done that, then you want to improve on your placing the following year. I mean, I know there's a few genetic freaks out there, who go out and win the overall title, their first competition. Those are few and far between. Most people don't do that, right? I know a few people who have, and some of them went on to, even become professional bodybuilders and all that. But the average Joe is not going to do that. So step one, get on stage. Step two, work on improving your placing, and then you can take that as far as you like, right? So that was my goal for years. I just wanted to improve my placing, and I wanted to win a provincial championships. That was my goal, and I kept at it until I did win an overall, at a provincial level. So boom. That was my main goal. And another big goal at that time, this parallels to my bodybuilding, because I started competing in bodybuilding when I was 17. And that's the same time that I started to get interested in girls, right? The teenage hormones are kicking in. So I wanted to look good physically, build up my self-esteem, my self-confidence, so that I would hopefully be more attractive to the ladies. So the fact that I was competing in bodybuilding and also trying to be more attractive to the ladies, it all went hand in hand. So it was that was my motivating factor. And that is a big motivating factor, right, for a lot of people. I mean, if you're single, you want to look good, you want to do what you can in order to, attract a mate. And that applies for men and women, both sides. So that was a huge motivating factor. And, as a side note, sometimes you see people who are single and they really put 100% effort into going to the gym and getting in shape and looking good. And then when they get into a relationship, especially a long-term relationship, and, you're comfortable with each other, okay, we're here for the long term and everything else, that's when people sometimes let themselves go, right? That's when the weight starts to pile on and everything else. And then if they ever do break up later on down the road, then the motivation to get back in shape happens, because now, boom, you got to get in shape because you want to find a new mate, right? So I see that a lot with people over the years. And I've had, people come to me for coaching programs. They're like, hey, man, I just went through a divorce. Now I'm fat and out of shape. I got to get in shape again, so I want to find a woman. And I say, okay, come on, let's just do this. So that's a big motivating factor, right? So you can use the competitive drive as well as the sexual drive, right? Sexual drive is a big motivating factor. Even Napoleon Hill talked about that in the books Think and Grow Rich, right? He talked about sexual energy and how big of an impact that has in your desire to succeed and to pursue and to become the best version of yourself. A lot of it has its roots in sexual energy. So don't knock that when it comes to using it to help you fuel your motivation to achieve your goals. So that was a big motivating factor. As I've gotten older, a big motivating factor now is I want to be a role model for my son. That's right now, that's my big thing. Like when I look at myself, I want to be the type of dad that he can look up to and say, I want to be like dad, right? I don't want to be the fat, out of shape dad with a beer belly hanging over my belt and all that kind of stuff. I I don't want my son to be making fun of his dad, saying, "Hey, look at your belly," and all that kind of stuff, and making fun of me because I'm fat and out of shape. I want to be his role model, right? I want to be, super dad, if you will, right? I want him to be able to look up to me as someone that he can aspire to, someone who's fit and in shape and healthy and lead by example. So at this stage of the game, that is my main motivating factor right now, is to be a positive role model for my son. So your motivation is going to change, and your training is going to change as well, right? I mean, like when you're in that young building phase, it's a different mindset, different training philosophy and all that. When you're in the competitive phase, it's a different, because I would alternate from the off-season bulking to the pre-contest cutting, and I always had that structure program in place. And now, where I'm older, it's not about bulking, it's not about cutting, it's none of that stuff. It's all about living as healthy as I can, and to optimize my health and fitness, right? I want my health markers in terms of like your cholesterol and your blood pressure and your blood sugar and all these things. I want those markers to be healthy and stable, so that I can be around and live a long, healthy life. So, I mean, I'm not bulking or cutting or going through any of that kind of ups and downs like I was back in the competition days. Now it's all about living a healthy lifestyle and getting into a lean muscular condition and maintain it, right? I want, my goal now is to maintain a lean physique year round. Like none of this, again, like no bulking, no cutting, just a nice, lean, healthy physique year round. And that's what I'm working for now. So just kind of share the transitions, right? We're all at our different transitions. So, I mean, you listening to this right now, you can probably relate. You can think of, where are you? If you're a young guy trying to build up, right, and you're going through that phase, I can relate to that. Been there, done that. Maybe you're in the mid phase and you're either, maybe thinking about the competitive side, maybe you're in this bulking, cutting phase, or you're kind of back and forth between it sometimes. That's fine as well. I can relate to that. Or if you're in the older phase and you're just looking to live that lean, healthy, active lifestyle and be as healthy and fit as you can be, that's where I'm transitioning to right now. I'm in that phase. All right, let's see what else. We got a lot of questions coming through here. Okay, this is Holland saying, I've started lifting and strength training rather than cardio and got to my ideal weight. My question is, I'm gaining weight but not inches. Is this muscle? I have been lifting progressively heavier. If you are gaining weight but you're not gaining inches, that is a prime sign that you are recomping your body, meaning you're building muscle, losing body fat, and actually improving your body composition. Muscle is more dense than fat. So, I mean, if you see the example, like you can even Google search it and see the pictures, 5 pounds of muscle versus 5 pounds of fat, right? 5 pounds of muscle is very dense and compact. 5 pounds of fat is all big and flobbery, right? So if your weight is, you can actually gain weight and lose inches, because again, muscle is more dense, it's more heavy, fat is soft and flobbery and takes up more space, right? I mean, if you look at like a 200-pound bodybuilder, or you look at a 200-pound fat person, they're going to look totally different, and the measurements are going to be totally different. Like a 200-pound bodybuilder could possibly have like maybe like a low 30-inch waist, whereas a 200-pound fat person probably got a 40-inch waist, right? Because it takes up more space. So yeah, what you're doing, I mean, that's a sign that you're building muscle, especially if you're seeing strength gains along with it. We've got Sal joining us. He says, Lee, how did the anabolic reload program work for you? He says he's 60 years old and thinks it was a great idea, but never saw day 2 of my video series. I know I've been slack with that. I do apologize. I'm still following that program. And in fact, you can go to anabolicreload.com and download a copy of the book. It's a whole PDF program, and it's got all the different workout programs outlined in it. I mean, the one that I posted on my website, I mean, that's just one of many that you will get in that book. But you can go to anabolicreload.com, download it for yourself. I've actually stuck with it ever since I started it. I just love that program. I love the way that it's total body workouts, but then each day you're doing a different total body workout. So you're getting the frequency, plus you're getting the variety all in one. And I just like the structure of it. So I'm actually still following it. Sometimes I may vary it a little bit, like change up some of the exercises or whatever, depending on my schedule or my mood or whatnot. But overall, I'm still following that same basic template, and it's working well for me. Okay, we got John joining us. So we got Saeed, I think it is. Says, I'm really skinny, trying to bulk up, eating high protein diet, having protein shakes, going to the gym. However, this still doesn't help me gain weight. I've been doing this for a year. All right. First off, it takes a lot longer than a year to build a thick muscular body. So, I mean, congratulations for sticking it out for a year, but it's going to take longer than that. I mean, to kind of put things in perspective, when I started working out compared to when I felt that I was big enough to actually compete in bodybuilding, it took 5 years of training. And even then, I still had a long way to go in order to fill out my physique even further. Most people, I mean, this is the brutal, honest truth. In order for you to maximize your muscle development, you know, to fill out your frame and say, like, put 50 pounds of muscle on your frame, if that is your goal, it's going to take 10 years, right? That's a realistic timeline to look at. And so you kind of put things in perspective. You've been working out for a year. That's great. I'm sure you've made progress in that year. Like, chances are you're stronger now than you were when you started. You know, chances are you probably have more lean muscle on your frame than when you started, even though, you know, it doesn't feel like it, because you're probably, you know, we're our own worst critic. You know, you're not seeing how far you came. You're probably looking at other people who are further ahead and saying, well, I'm still not as big as that guy, or I'm not as strong as that guy. And you kind of discount your own progress. Rather than get hung up in comparing yourself to others, try and compare yourself to where you were when you started. And again, I don't know you personally or whatever, but I can only assume that if you've been following a muscle building diet and you've been working out for a year, it's kind of like inevitable you should be bigger and stronger and have more muscle on your frame now than you did a year ago. Even if it's not where you ultimately want to be, you're probably still further along than when you started. So, you know, you need to keep continuing with that progress. But another thing you need to look at as well is if you're not gaining weight and you're struggling, then that's a sign that you need to eat more food to create a bigger caloric surplus, right? I mean, for a skinny hard gainer, you sometimes don't realize how much food you actually need to consume, and vice versa. Like, if someone is trying to lose weight and they're not losing weight, they say, well, I'm dieting and I'm exercising, I'm doing everything, but I'm not losing weight. You're eating too damn much, right? You got to create a bigger caloric deficit, either exercise more or eat less. You need to somehow create a bigger deficit. When you're trying to put on size, you need to create a bigger surplus. Protein is important, but don't neglect carbs and fat. Having adequate carbs and fat in your diet will help to fuel your muscle growth. Because when you have enough carbs and fat in your system, you'll utilize that for energy, and then you'll save the protein for actually building and recovering muscle tissue. One of the things, a lot of people only focus on the protein. So if you're eating a high protein diet, you might be utilizing protein as an energy source as well. And protein is not a good energy source. You know, it's not an ideal energy source for fueling muscle growth, right? It can help to preserve muscle when you're in a fat loss phase. But if your goal is to pack on muscular body weight, you need high protein, high carbs, and high fat. You need it all in order to fuel that process. So, I mean, if this is something you'd like some help with, I mean, you'd like a customized program or whatever, then shoot me an email and we can discuss it further. But those are a few tips that'll help. And again, think long term, right? You've been doing it for a year. It's going to take longer than that, right? You got to be in this for the long game. Let's see what else. Daniel saying, is protein okay for a 16-year-old? Yes, protein is okay for a 16-year-old, and it's okay for anyone of any age. Protein is a required nutrient for everybody. Regardless if you are an infant, a newborn baby that just came out of mom, needs protein. If you're an 82-year-old senior citizen, you need protein. If you're a 16-year-old teenager, you need protein. Protein is okay for everybody. It's required nutrient for life. All right, Brad is joining us. Hey, I had a talk with Brad earlier. He's a going to sign up for the coaching program soon. And hey, Brad, welcome to our video chat. He's glad he cut this live. Who else we got there? Siam is joining us. He says, sir, you were very popular in 2011. What made you quit YouTube at that time? I didn't quit YouTube at that time. If you go back over my channel, you will see there was videos posted from 2011 onwards. I was popular in 2011 because that was the year that we actually had a very big promotion. And we had a lot of people promoting us. It was a year, myself, a good friend of mine, Vince Del Monte, we created a program called the 21-Day Fast Mass Building Program. And we launched it, and we had a lot of other people get behind it and promote it as well. So at the time, it was actually one of the biggest muscle building program launches you know, online. It was huge. We sold thousands of copies of that program and created a lot of buzz, and you know, got a lot of exposure to a lot of people. So 2011 was a big year. Yeah, there's no doubt about it. But it's not like I've quit or stopped after that. Right? I've still been pumping out YouTube videos. Again, you go check out my channel. I mean, you go back through all the videos. There was videos posted in 2012. There was videos in 2013, 14, and so on. One thing that I will say, 2011 was the last year I competed in bodybuilding. Now, like I said, I still was working. I was still making content and everything else, but I wasn't competing. So due to that nature, some people who were following me from the competitive point of view, you know, wanted to follow my competition journey. If I wasn't competing anymore, then obviously they probably stopped following me because, you know, they're not following the competitive journey anymore. But yeah, I mean, I haven't quit. I'm still here. All right, let's see what else. I'm gonna probably answer a couple more, include up, because I know we always go over an hour. You know, that's nothing new. Any of you who've been tuned into these video chats before, you know, I say they're an hour-long chat, but I always go longer than an hour. That's just the way I am. I like to over-deliver. Let's see what else we got. I'm just going to scrim through. How big can you get naturally, or is it different for everyone? It's going to be different for everyone, but I'll give you like a benchmark that you can kind of go by. You can potentially look at putting 50 pounds of muscular body weight on your frame over your genetic average. So let's just say genetically you're, you know, maybe you're a 150-pound guy. If you work out and do everything to the best of your ability, you could probably get yourself up to a 200-pound guy, right? That's what I would look at. I mean, that's basically what I've done, right? You know, I'm in that 200-pound range, a little over. Like maybe my weight fluctuates between 200 and 210. That's where I am. And I'd say if I didn't work out at all, I'd probably be down around that 150 range. That's probably you know, it's a good ballpark that you can look at. You probably gain 50 pounds of muscle on your frame over the lifetime naturally. Now, if you go the performance enhancement route, you can probably double that, right? I mean, sometimes you see guys, especially top-level pro bodybuilders, who put on like 100 pounds of muscle or something like that. But hey, 50 pounds is pretty damn good, right? Now, I'm not saying you're going to put 50 pounds on in a matter of, you know, 12 weeks or any crap like that. I mean, it's going to take a long time. Most people can look at 50 pounds within 10 years of hard, consistent training. That's a very realistic goal for most people. All right. So what else? Antonio's saying he's having trouble feeling his back muscles when he's doing rows. Any tips on how to engage the lats and upper back muscles? Lighten up the weight and focus on slower, controlled form and really squeeze your back. You can even try this now. Like, you can squeeze your back just with no weight at all. I mean, if you can't do a row without feeling your back contract with no weight at all, then there's no point in actually holding weight. Like, literally you can even play around with this now while you're sitting down watching this. Just do different exercises and focus on trying to flex and squeeze the muscles of your back without any resistance. Just like, you know, you flex and squeeze your biceps. I mean, everybody can do that, right? Because we've been making muscle since we were kids. But learn how to flex and squeeze your back and feel your back contract without even holding weight. Learn how to do that. And you can go through different planes of motion. You know, you can do like a pull down, a row, or whatever. Feel your back, and then try and apply that when you're doing your exercises. So when you're doing your rows and when you're doing your pull downs and things like that, use lighter weight and just feel your back stretch and contract with each rep. Now, it's probably going to take a little bit of time, but have that as your goal. So even like whatever weights you're lifting now, slice them in half. So if you're currently doing 100 pounds on the seated row, drop it down to 50 and literally just go through the motions and purposely try and squeeze your lats with every single repetition. If you do that, and then you can gradually start to build the weights up. Once you have that feeling where you can feel the muscles squeeze and contract and you actually get a pump, then you can start building the weights up gradually until you're back to lifting the weights you are now, and you'll also get a more of a pump, more mind-muscle connection in the back. But what you're explaining there is actually quite common, and the reason that's common is because the back is out of sight, out of mind. We can't see the back. So it's hard to visualize it and to feel it. Like if you're training arms, well, you can look down and you can see your arms. You know, if you're training chest, you know, you can see your chest in the mirror. You can look down and you can see your chest. You know, you're training legs, you can see your legs. You know, especially if you're doing like a leg extension or something like that. Any muscle that you can see when you're training, whether you see it in the mirror or you see it just by looking down and visualizing it, you tend to have a better mind-muscle connection. But muscles on the back of the body where you can't see them, it's harder to visualize them, and it's harder to get that mind-muscle connection. So that's why you really need to be more kinesthetic and really focus on the feeling aspect of it. And it's going to take more time. It's going to be harder to get that connection with the back. But if you put the time and effort into it, you will be able to do it. Oh man, let's see what else we got. Azim is joining us. He says he really liked the videos I did with Dan Locke. Can we ask questions other than fitness, nutritions, and resolutions? Okay, well, I'm getting ready to clue up the video chat now, but if there's another question there, I really have been asking questions besides resolution. I've been asked. I answer whatever comes through pretty much. Marcio is saying, what do I think about calisthenics? I'm a huge fan of calisthenics and basically body weight exercises. I like to do weight training as well as body weight, and both of them can be incorporated into your workouts. Sometimes body weight exercises can actually be more productive because you're moving your entire body through space versus just moving your limbs. And that's why squats are more exhausting than leg presses, because you're moving your entire body in a three-dimensional movement. You're engaging more muscle when you move your entire body. That's why pull-ups are harder than pull-downs. You know, it's why like dips are harder than bench presses, especially if you're doing like a weighted dip or something like that. Whenever you move your full body, it tends to engage more neuromuscular activation, and it's more exhausting, more fatiguing, stimulates more muscle than when you're just doing exercise where you're moving your limbs. Now, I'm not saying that exercises that only move your limbs are bad, but it's good to have both. It's good to have both the full body weight calisthenic exercises as well as the weight training exercises. I mean, prime example, look at the physique of a top-level gymnast. Like, especially, I mean, some gymnasts have physiques and have strength that is just mind-blowing, and they don't do any weight training. I mean, it's just all body weight exercises. All right. Man, we got a lot of questions coming through. Let's see. I'm going to answer this one, and then I'm going to clue it up. This one's from Hugh, and he's saying, what's your view on intermittent fasting? He says, I'm a beginner. 3 days of weight training, 2 days of cardio. Is protein necessary first thing in the morning? All right. For a beginner, I would not recommend intermittent fasting. Now, I know earlier in the video chat, I did mention intermittent fasting, and I said that I actually follow it myself. I'm actually going to do a disclaimer here. I would not recommend intermittent fasting for a beginner. And the reason for that is because intermittent fasting doesn't teach you how to eat properly. It can, depending on how you do it. But here's the drawback to it. If you go all day without eating food, like you have a prolonged window, whatever your variation of intermittent fasting is, because there's a ton of different variations. Like some people do like a 16-hour fast and an 8-hour feeding window. Some people do longer. Maybe they'll have like a 20-hour fast and a 4-hour eating window. Some people just do one meal a day. Whatever. There's a gazillion different variations. I mean, some people will even like eat one day and fast the next, eat one day and fast the next, whatever. There's, like I say, different variations. But the problem with this is if you go, let's just say you do a fast for 20 hours and then you eat for 4 hours. The problem with that is you're probably starving by the time you get through your fast. And some people use this as an excuse to eat whatever they want. Now, there's two sides to the coin, because sometimes you can actually make it work, right? If you go for that prolonged period of fasting and you actually tap into burning body fat, and it limits your overall caloric intake because you're not eating food all day and you're only eating in that small window, you can actually use it to your advantage and lose body fat. But if you're eating the wrong types of foods, it's still not the most healthy approach. I mean, if you're eating junk food while even if you're following an intermittent fasting program, you can still gain weight or maybe not lose weight, and it can still do damage to your health. Like if you're eating a lot of fried foods and processed foods and junk like that, you're still eating processed food, even if you're intermittent fasting. So the reason why I'm not a big advocate of it for beginners is because it doesn't teach you proper eating habits. I like to do the more frequent meal pattern and learn how to eat properly for each meal first. Build up your metabolism by eating good quality foods and lots of it. So have a good breakfast, have a good lunch, have a good dinner. If you want to have snacks in between, that's fine as well. But focus on quality nutrition and fueling your body, building up your metabolism. Because a lot of beginners have probably never focused on this before, so they're not used to getting all the nutrition that their body needs. They're not used to getting the protein that they need, the vegetables that they need, and the micro and macronutrients that they need. So focus on fueling the body first. Once you have that done, that's phase one. Get that done. Then you can probably try different diet strategies. So I mean, once you got your system in place, then maybe if you want to try and trim down and cut some body fat, well, hey, let's try skipping breakfast and still eat clean for your dinner and your lunch, your dinner, and whatever snacks you have afterwards, and see how that works. So I mean, you can incorporate intermittent fasting once you have the fundamentals in place, but I wouldn't recommend someone start with it because it sometimes leads to poor food choices. You're starving yourself all day long, and then when you're hungry, you just want to kind of eat, and sometimes you may make poor food choices in that process. And just another side note, seeing we're on the intermittent fasting topic, intermittent fasting is not like a guaranteed fat loss solution. You can get fat by intermittent fasting. And I'll give you a prime example of this. The fattest, the biggest human beings in the world follow intermittent fasting. You know who I'm talking about? The fattest, biggest, blobbiest people in the world, sumo wrestlers. The diet of a sumo wrestler is intermittent fasting. They will not eat all day long. They will do their training and their wrestling practice and whatever. They'll do all their traditional wrestling practice and all that early in the day on an empty stomach. Then later in the day, they gorge themselves. And they gorge themselves on a lot. I mean, usually the traditional sumo diet is a lot of actually healthy food. I mean, fish and rice and vegetables and stuff that you would think is healthy, but they eat it in such large quantities. Plus, they traditionally drink beer along with it, or sake, or whatever. So they're combining high amounts of food, high amounts of calories, plus alcohol from the beer or sake or whatever, and that's what creates this. I mean, look at the physiques they develop, right? I mean, they gain a lot of fat as well as gaining some, a lot of lean muscle in the process too. But bottom line, just because someone is intermittent fasting, that doesn't mean you're automatically guaranteed to lose weight. It's still a calories in versus calories out equation. So if you gorge yourself with an insane amount of calories within an intermittent fasting window, you can still get fat. And I mean, sumo wrestlers are a prime example of that. So it's a tool. It can help, but you still have to have the proper nutritional principles in place in order to make it work. Regardless if it's intermittent fasting or if it's keto or if it's well-balanced diet or whatever, calories in versus calories out still counts. That still matters. I mean, you can't get beyond that. you still need that in place in order to burn fat. Or if on the flip side, you still need that in order to build muscle, right? You need to have a surplus to gain, or you need to have a deficit to lose. Regardless of what type of diet that is, you can't get past those numbers. All right, guys, I'm going to get ready and clue it up. We have gone over an hour. I always do. Like I said, whatever it is, got an hour and 20 minutes or hour and 25 minutes, something like that. So thanks again for tuning in. I always enjoy doing these live video chats with you, and we had some great questions and conversation back and forth here. Again, I'll be doing another live video chat next Friday. This is a regular thing for the Total Fitness Bodybuilding YouTube channel. So if you're new and just tuning in, hey, every Friday at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time, we have our video chats. If there's any change to this schedule, I will post it up in advance to let you know, so that you're not here waiting for a video chat. That's not going to happen, but more often than not, they do. And I will have the replay of this posted up within the next 24 hours with the timestamps there, so you can go back and jump to the particular questions and topics that interest you the most. And I try to do that with all my video chats. So if you want to go back over some of the past replays, you can open up the video description and see the timestamps there as well. So with that being said, I'm going to clue it up. Have yourself a great day. Have yourself a great weekend. I'll talk to you next Friday. Take care. Over and out.